And now, you're tuned into RBLR, the home of Tampa Bay's RBLR Sports.
Good evening, everyone out there listening tonight to RBLR Sports. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Rowdies show tonight. I am here with my usual co-host, Carlos. And Carlos, I'm going to turn it over to ask how you were doing. But beforehand, I got to say, I think we are possibly on the line for putting a hex on this Rowdies team after we were both so sure that they were going to win.
Oh, my gosh, James. Oh, my goodness. I think you might be right. I was 100% confident about this game. This was one of those games that I just had no doubt about. I thought my score line was going to be 100% correct. And it wasn't. And we saw that this weekend, but we're going to get into that. And I'm just going to save my frustration for when we get into all of that. So going away for that from 1 second. James, tell me about how you're doing outside of the Rowdies. Tell me something good about your weekend.
Something good about my weekend. Okay, that's not a bad thing. We celebrated Father's Day, like I'm sure most people did, and my family, to celebrate that, we went to Mr. Dunderback's up in North Tampa. So that was a good time. I really like that place. They've got a really good German selection. They've also got a little market there with meats and cheeses and German chocolates and all that stuff. So that was pretty cool. What about you?
We did the same thing. We enjoyed a laid-back Father's Day. And fun fact, I asked my dad, hey, where do you want to go for lunch? We're looking for a festive lunch. I list out all these options, thinking about La Teresita, this great Cuban place over here in Tampa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a bunch of other great places that he loves. And you know what he said, James? He said, Chili's. We went to Chili's for lunch.
I guess it's a classic.
It's a classic, I guess. He had the steak fajitas, and it was good. I mean, I'm not going to lie. The food was fantastic, but Chili's was not the place I expected to be on Father's Day. But
I would have preferred La Teresita personally, but yeah, it's not up to us this on Father's Day, is it?
Exactly. I'm not a father yet, so we'll leave it to my dad to pick where he wants to go for now. But nonetheless, a good weekend. But man, that Rowdies game on Saturday, James, it was tough to watch a little bit. I'm not going to lie. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we've danced around it a little bit. So let's just get started at this point. On Saturday night, the Rowdies drew 1-1 with Charleston Battery. It was on Pride Night. It was prideful in terms of supporting the LGBTQ community. I don't know if it was quite as prideful in terms of our performance on the pitch. I expected it to be a much better performance considering the opposition, as we have been hinting at, but no, it did not turn out that way. The result means that Carlos and I get 0 points for our predictions because we were wrong about that scoreline and the result ultimately. We do have a game to preview for this weekend as the Rowdies travel away to Pittsburgh, but we're going to get into that later. Something that I think we should note, because, it didn't really feel that way after this weekend, but the Rowdies are unbeaten in 6 games. Like I said, that might feel a little weird considering not only the way the Rowdies played, but also the Tampa Bay Lightning on Saturday night. It was a rough night for Tampa sports, but that's okay. We've got a lot to talk about regardless. So before we get into that, please obviously follow RBLR Sports at RBLR Sports on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, like and subscribe to our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Wherever you listen to podcasts, I'm sure you can find us there. And please take the time to do so. Now, Carlos, if you could get us into this quick review of the home game against Charleston, and then we will move into our questions and our analysis.
Sure, let's get into this game, James. I mean, I'll try and make it quick. It was kind of frustrating. I want to get into these questions. They're going to be great. A lot to break down here. But nonetheless, like we've talked about, on Saturday night, the Tampa Bay Rowdies drew 1-1 with the Charleston Battery on Pride Night. A good game in general. It was entertaining if you're a neutral fan, but for us here, I mean, it was a little tough to watch. The lineup was CJ Cochran in goal, Guillen, Wyke, and Van Kazel made up the back line. Dahlgaard, Ekra, Hilton, and Antley made up the midfield. And the front three was Leo Fernandez, Jake LaCava, and the unusual change of starting Lucky Mkosana. Quick note here, on the bench were 2 of the Academy players that have signed those USL Academy contracts. They were Santiago Castaneda, and Tate Johnson. Interesting to see them on the bench for a league game. Not something that I expected. Another thing to note, Neil Collins was not actually present on the touchline this Saturday. I was told that he was in Europe by one of the players. What for specifically, I don't know. But on his Instagram today, I saw that he was in Scotland for some sort of coaching event. So likely has to do with his coaching license and whatnot in Scotland. Going back to the game, though, the Rowdies did look positive pretty early on at moments in the first half. They had that great chance when Jake LaCava hit the post. Really should have put that away around the 8th minute. But the first real breakthrough came through when Leo Fernandez had an incredible solo run, basically from midfield, and ripped one right at top of the 18 to put the Rowdies ahead 1-0. But the second half obviously did not play out the same way as the first half. The Rowdies looked almost lost for an answer. Charleston came back with some sort of new energy, and they held their own ground. And eventually they had a silly breakthrough, a really serious breakdown in coverage on the back line. Booth found, I think his name's Pigot or Piggott. James, correct me if I'm wrong. The Charleston player, I just don't know how to pronounce his last name. He got behind.
I think they just say Piggott, yeah.
Yeah, right. He got behind Guillen way too easily and found Williams basically wide open. He bodied Van Kazel off and got behind Wyke to tap in the cross. Tied the game 1-1. And that's where the game would end, James. A really tough draw in a game that, frankly, we both thought we should have, blown out our opponent in. Tough game, tough to watch, but that's how it is sometimes. So let's jump into some of these questions to figure out, I guess, why this result ended the way it did. There was that obvious difference, like I'd mentioned, in momentum between these two halves. We were playing solid in the first half, probably could have capitalized on some of these chances, like that Jake LaCava crossbar. What caused these differences in momentum? What gave Charleston this burst of energy in the second half, do you think?
Yeah, so between the first half and the second half, as you said, Neil Collins was not there. We were in the press conference with John Stead. It turns out Neil was receiving, further coaching training in Europe. So
right.
That's just part of, making sure that you have all of the badges to continue to coach at a high level. And obviously, I think, fans understand that, and the Rowdies ownership, they all understand that. It's just something that needs to be done. But that did mean that we had John Stead afterwards to, ask, hey, what kind of happened with this? What did you see? And one of the things that he said was that, among the different bright notes that we had from the first half, Charleston ended up playing it a lot more long ball than he was anticipating them to do, which, I can't say that I am the most familiar person with Charleston and their tactics up until this game with the Rowdies. So, perhaps that's something that they really didn't have any reason to expect up until now. The other thing that I would say is John Stead also said we ultimately ended up playing a lot of long ball ourselves just because of the way the game played out. And, that was obviously not something that the Rowdies prefer to do either, because I think anybody who has watched this team for 1 or 2 or 3 games, they can tell you that the Rowdies do have a pretty good tactic of keeping the ball on the ground as much as they can and switching it from side to side. Lewis Hilton might do those long balls over the top to one of the fullbacks out on the wing, be that Connor Antley, Sebastian Dalgard, Leo Fernandez, Jake Arman, whoever it has been, Dayon Harris when he's not injured. So these were all things that came up. And, I asked him about all of those problems that we had, in addition to, substitutions was something that I wanted to know about personally, because we started with Sebastian Dalgard on the left. That's not something we've seen a lot. And we started with Connor Antley on the right. That is something we're more familiar with. But both of them came off relatively early into the second half, not 10, 15 minutes, but they did not make it close to, 80, 90 minutes of the game. So he said those two guys are still coming back from a lengthy layoff themselves from being injured. So he had to make the substitutions. And ultimately that meant that Leo Fernandez, who is usually such a big bright spot recently up in the forward line, he had to move to the left wing back spot. And they brought in somebody that allowed Lawrence Wyke to step up into the right wing back spot. Like we have not seen him there for a little while, actually. But, I don't think that he did anything poor at the back. Jordan Scarlett, or on the right wing back, I should say, Jordan Scarlett was at the back where Lawrence White had started the game. So he obviously is another good player, and we're used to seeing him. I think the only reason he didn't start was, the time he spent away with the Jamaican national team over the past week. But, these were all factors, I would say. And I guess our ability to handle the long balls from Charleston and, how we ultimately had to play into that game ourselves, all of that did suck the life out of our attacks and their usual patterns that we create to get those attacks going. Additionally, one more thing that I will say while I've been hogging the mic for a while here is that I really did not think that our pressing led to a lot in this game. I think it led to the one good chance where Jake LaCava unfortunately hit the crossbar, something you've already noted. And I surely would have loved to, watch that sail into the upper 90 on the far post as opposed to smacking that crossbar. But outside of that, I don't think that we had a lot of success pressing.
Sure. No, that's what I was thinking about too, because I know that press has been such a huge part of our game the past few games. And that was something that was notably, again, I wouldn't say absent, like you mentioned, that crossbar opportunity from Jake LaCava. I mean, that came out of that press, but that was really the only chance that we sort of created from something like that. And against a Charleston Battery team that frankly has not been playing well, like it's just not a good team, really. I thought we would create more chaos in their back line with stuff like that. It was a tough game. I mean, what can you say? Those two halves were, I wouldn't even say night and day, really. The first half, we were in control, but I never felt like the game was put away. I saw Eureka at halftime, and I talked to him, and we were talking about the first half and whatnot. And I was saying, it's a weird game. We're up by 1. We should be up by 1, but we should be up, by more than that, to be honest. I mean, the whole vibe of the game just felt off. We had academy kids on the bench. It felt like we were kind of taking this game for granted. You know what I mean, James? Like
I agree.
Yeah, for as much as Charleston isn't a great team, like I've said, I mean, seeing the two TBU kids on the bench, it's always great to see, but it almost felt like we were kind of disrespecting our opponent. Like we weren't really taking Charleston seriously. And I think that attitude seeped onto the field a little bit. I think you could tell that we weren't really taking this game as seriously as we were taking the Louisville game. And in reality, I mean, they're worth the same amount of points at the end of the day. And we ended up, losing more points to Charleston than we did against Louisville. Like that should never happen. You know what I mean? It was frustrating. And I think that kind of contemptness coming into the second half with the 1-0 lead, that's what was our downfall, really. I think Charleston felt that, they were only down by 1, and that meant that they still had a chance. And that's what I told Eureka at halftime. I said, we're in control of this game, but it's only 1 goal. I mean, we've seen it before where our opponent just needs one weird long ball, and they're in, and they take an easy 1-on-1 chance. And in this case, it was a cheeky little pass to Pagot, and then Pagot a nice little cross to Williams, who put, I mean, one of the easiest goals he'll put into the season. I think that was the biggest thing, really, was kind of just that attitude of, again, and I'm kind of assuming this based on what I saw on the field. I didn't get a chance to talk to any of the players after, in like a press conference setting, but in talking to some of them very casually when they were signing autographs and stuff, I mean, they felt like it was a very winnable game. They all seemed like they should have won, which is, it's all good and dandy. Like that's a great attitude to have, but that has to happen on the field during the game and not after the game, right? So I think at the end of the day, that's kind of the biggest thing that caused the draw instead of the win. It is what it is. But I want to move on and talk a little bit about some of the statistics we see at the end of the game, right? We've talked about this before, that theme of missed opportunities. And again, not to tout too much on the Jake LaCava crossbar. It's just the one that's fresh in my mind because I went back and watched the highlights, 5 minutes before we started recording this again, just to refresh myself a little bit. Jake LaCava has obviously been a great player. He's been scoring. He's our lead scorer. He's our lead goal scorer right now, right? Between him and Leo Fernandez and in our really solid midfield, we still outpossessed and outshot Charleston by a pretty decent amount. We saw that theme of missed opportunities kind of characterize that first half. How much is this of a, I don't know, a similar story, I guess, to games that have happened previously, of the missed opportunities, that theme of missed opportunities? Are those stats possibly maybe even misleading here, James?
Yeah, this is a question that I think relates really well to, or leads me to think about a couple of things in particular, and those are, like we said, the chance with Jake LaCava hitting the crossbar, and then other than that, I would say in the last 5 minutes, yet again, this is something that we've talked about how many times, but the Rowdies come alive in the last 5 to 10 minutes, and then they have a lot more chances, I would say, at that point than they did in the rest of the game, like in a sustained way. Obviously, we had chances here and there, but I don't know that it is really indicative of how the game went. I think the last 5 to 10 minutes, again, maybe even it was just stoppage time. It might be too generous to say that the Rowdies really played well in the second half outside of stoppage time. What I would really say is that the first half, the Rowdies did well. They didn't do anything that was, blow the doors off the building or anything.
Right,
it wasn't anything that would wow the audience as someone who was sitting in it for the most part. Leo Fernandez's goal obviously was very well taken, but that wasn't even a very good chance. If you look at the statistics, one thing that was listed was that the Rowdies had 2 big chances, which I believe accounts for 2 expected goals. And both of them were misses. So Leo Fernandez's goal was not considered, an expected goal. It was something that is kind of a bonus because he struck it so well from so far out. But yeah, the second half, we really didn't create much at all up until, like I said, stoppage time, give or take. So I don't know that it is even, fair for us to say that the Rowdies deserve to win in this one. I think that possibly it's, I think that actually it's just a fair result in the end, a 1-1 draw.
Sure. No, and that's totally fair. A fair result seems to characterize this game pretty well, because we should have won based on, just how we've been playing recently and kind of the form differences here. With the exception of Charleston's big win against Pittsburgh last weekend, which seemed kind of like an anomaly, to be honest. But I think based on how the game went in the second half, especially when, again, like having just recently watched the highlight video right before I hopped on here, if you look at the highlight video, the 4 minutes of highlights or whatever, all of them are first half highlights. And then I think there was like one clip from the second half, and then it just cuts to the end. That last kind of stoppage time chance that Jake LaCava had, a really beautiful play where he linked up with Leo Fernandez. Stop me if you heard that one before. And and came really like inches from scoring. The name of the defender who came across and stopped that chance slips my mind. But that was a real tough chance that we could have put away. But I mean, honestly, the Charleston defender just made a great play there. So there's nothing Jake or Leo could have done any better there. So yeah, in that way, I would say it's a totally fair result, just based on kind of the lack of generated chances there in the second half. On the second half, what do you think we could have done differently as a team? What could have happened differently that could have put things, I guess, maybe back on the right track after this weird start to the half?
Yeah, I think that for one thing, John Stead noted again that, we kind of turned into their game, and we were playing a long ball along with them, as opposed to playing the way that we usually do. And, that might come down a little bit to the people who are on the field. So I kind of wonder about this. And let me run this by you, Carlos, and see what you think about it. So in the first half, we saw a lot of times when not Pittsburgh. We played Pittsburgh on Saturday. No, when Charleston had the ball, it was Leo Fernandez and Jake LaCava who were the highest players on the field that were applying pressure to Charleston in the back line. And then you saw Lucky kind of dropping in between them, almost as if he was the number 10. Now, obviously, it didn't line up that way all the time, but that is how we applied pressure. And like I said, it didn't really work out this game. In the second half, it turned out a lot less that we saw Lucky dropping back. It was Lucky and Jake LaCava who were up, and then we saw Leo Fernandez more in that roving role through the midfield. And that is how we had it when we didn't have the ball. So I don't know if the players that we had on the field were really built into the system that we would generally like to play for the most part. You know, obviously Leo and Jake LaCava have been there for the most part over the last couple of weeks. And Lucky is a fantastic super sub. But my only issue with this, and I don't want to present it as my having an issue with Lucky Mkosana. He is an amazing player. He has done incredible things for this club, and I don't think that his, legacy can be anything less than, he's as close to a club legend as you can get without having 100 appearances for us, But I still don't think that he's necessarily built to play the game that Steven Dos Santos or Kyle Gregg are when those two are when one of them is our starting forward. And I don't think that Lucky has, there were a couple of times when he brought the ball down and he was unable to keep himself in between, the ball and the player, and then Charleston win it and they are able to kind of kick off whatever they want to do. And I did see a lot of, I saw a lot of good play from the Charleston midfielders, Andrew Booth and Romario Piggott. They were getting a lot of success in the midfield because they definitely didn't seem to, there weren't a lot of times that the Rowdies were just kind of knocking it past them and passing it around them. They were able to intercept it. They were able to keep it for a little while. What do you think about the selections, and what do you think about, the way that we played with the players on the field? If you have Lucky out there, I'm just saying maybe we need to approach things a little differently.
No, I couldn't agree more with you, James, honestly. Like you said, I mean, I love Lucky. I mean, Lucky Mkosana is the guy. Are you kidding me? Like, you can't think of Lucky if you're a Rowdies fan and not think about the Louisville game last year in the playoffs. He's obviously a huge part of this club and the club's culture and everything, but he's not built for a starting role right now, honestly. Like, he doesn't play more than, like, at max 30, 40 minutes a game, right? I mean, he's a super sub. That's his role on the team. He's a role player, and his role is incredibly important. It felt weird seeing him in the starting position, and not because I don't think he's like capable of it or anything. He's just not really, that hasn't been his role all season. I just don't know why we would change it up now. You know what I mean? We're almost halfway through the season. We're playing against the second worst team in the conference, but that's no reason to just totally switch up what the game plan has been, the plan that's been relatively successful these past few games where we've been unbeaten. I really don't get it. I mean, like I said in the past, in the last week's episode and the episode before that, I mean, Kyle Gregg has not necessarily been like my favorite player to start based on his missing of chances and everything, but that's been his role, right? It's been him and earlier in the season, Guanzati, who have been, and Dos Santos, who have been the starters. Mkosana has always been the super sub, and that's been his role, and that's been where he's been most effective. So pointing that out in particular, I think, is really important because, again, he's super talented. I didn't really notice a moment while he was in the game that he, put himself in a dangerous position or created a dangerous opportunity, though. And against Charleston, like, you have to do that. You have to really put away those goals because Charleston, again, is not a good team. They're not that great, but they played well. They held their own and they shut us out in the second half, and that's what carried them to the draw. And I felt so like just frustrated watching the highlights again and seeing how they celebrated at the end of the game. They were really happy and good. I mean, they deserved it too. They played a great second half. I mean, but they were celebrating like they won a playoff game or something. And I was like, oh my God, so frustrating. Looking at other parts of the lineup that were a little weird to me. I think going back to the bench, I mentioned this earlier. it's super duper weird to have two USL Academy kids on the bench for a league game. I get it for an Open Cup game, right? I get it for an Open Cup game. And I know other teams have made it more of a routine thing to have academy kids kind of feature on their squad more regularly. That just hasn't really been a big thing for us, or I would go as far as saying it hasn't really been a big thing for any of the other like big USL teams. It's a thing for like the two teams, the B teams, right? Where they have more space, more younger kids. It was weird to see them on the bench. And again, it just felt like we were kind of taking Charleston a little bit for granted, right? That was the other big weird thing for me. And then I think one of the last things was obviously we talked about Scarlett being on international duty and this time with the Jamaican national team. Subbing him in like the 87th minute for Connor Antley, that was super weird to me too. I don't know if you felt the same way when we're tied 1-1 here and we felt like we had some momentum here. We're pushing for a goal. The last thing I would have expected our staff to do was bring in a defender, right? And especially for Antley, who helps create a lot of our chances. Like, again, I'm the casual fan watching from the stands, but it just felt weird even as a fan. Maybe they had some bigger picture. I'm sure they had a bigger picture in mind. They had some bigger strategic plan in mind, but it felt weird. Like I was expecting, I don't know, some more of a attacking threat to come in here. Etu was left on the bench. But then the other thing to note, again, going back to the academy players, was that the only other players left on the bench that isn't a Resurrena were the academy players. So are we really going to put them in at the end of the game to try and score a goal? Probably not. It was just a weird lineup to me, James, honestly. I don't know if you felt the same way. The whole like setup was odd. It was different from normal, and I think it showed on the field.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. Overall, the one thing I should correct what I said earlier about Connor Antley. He did make it, later into the game, as you just noted with his substitution. I was thinking of one of the other substitutions the Rowdies made, but to correct that, yes, Connor Antley did come out later in the game, and that was what John said was related to him, coming back from a lengthy layoff due to an injury where he missed a couple of games, and he should be back to fitness now, but I guess they don't rate him as being 90 minutes fit. So and when they took him out and they brought Jordan Scarlett on, that was just, I guess, more that was Connor Antley flagging as opposed to them making a decision in terms of our strategy. But yeah, as you said, the other thing is just with the other options that are on the bench, kind of what else are we supposed to do? I do like Lawrence White's ability to dribble. I've noted in a couple of other episodes that I would like to see him step back into the midfield to partner Lewis Hilton, because I think that he has a very good ability to carry the ball forward, possibly better than what I've seen from Jan Ekra this season. As much as I still do like Jan Ekra, still do support Jan Ekra as a player and what he brings to this team, I do think that Lawrence White has a better ability to progress the ball within the midfield position, but I don't know that he was the best at getting over from the right side and getting those crosses in. We did have a couple more chances in stoppage time, so I guess there is that caveat. But I don't know how well we did at crossing all game. It didn't seem as though we were getting a lot of very good quality crosses into the box. Is that something that you also notice?
Yeah. I mean, the crosses were definitely there. I noticed it, and it was good. I mean, I'm telling you, we created, especially late in the half, some good chances, but we got unlucky again with that Jake LaCava opportunity where there's a lot of movement in the box, and that 1-2 link up with Leo was just it was beautiful. And it's so sad that didn't end up in a goal, because Al Lang would have just erupted, and the whole attitude of this episode would have been just totally different. And it's crazy to think about how, like, the play up until then would have been the same thing. But that one goal would have just really changed everything about the outcome. And I guess even how we talk about the team on this episode. which I guess shows some of my personal bias as a fan. Like, you kind of ignore the bad play on the field even if it ends up in a win. You know what I'm saying? Um, it is what it is. It is what it is, and the lineup was weird, but we still could have won.
Absolutely.
We should have won with that lineup, but based on how we played, like we said earlier, the 1-1 draw was fair for what happened on the field.
Yep, that is about what I say based on everything that we've talked about here. The last question that I have, based on our lineup and everything that we've talked about here, obviously not the result that we wanted, but when we look at what could have been, we're going to get into the standings update in a little bit here. Just how big a missed opportunity is this? I mean, good Lord, against a team like Charleston, as bad as they've been, and with other teams doing what they did this past week, I just feel like I feel like this is 2 points dropped as opposed to 1 point gained.
No, it's a huge miss. It's a huge miss. That's why it feels like a loss, right? Like, it was a draw, but that's why we keep saying it feels like a loss. If you look at the standings, right, which we'll get into in a second, but really quickly, just get a little bit ahead of ourselves. We're behind Louisville by 3 points. Louisville's in first place, right? We look at this game, that's 2 points that we missed out on. And we look back earlier in the season, the other game that, really sticks out to me as a totally missed opportunity was that draw against Red Bulls 2 out in New York.
Yeah.
Where we just really controlled the game and just couldn't score, and the ref was questionable, but whatever. We should have beaten that team too. That's 4 points that would have put us in first place at the end of this weekend with everything that happened. I mean, it's really, really frustrating to look at the table and see, sound dramatic, to see what could have been, right? It's frustrating, and it's a huge missed opportunity. Another one I think of is that loss to Miami at home. Another missed opportunity, frankly. Another game where Neil wasn't present. So again, not to question John Stead's ability as a coach. It's just those 2 games without Neil haven't been great for us, unfortunately. So all these games that we should have won. Looking at Miami, we should have tied at least, right? They're so frustrating because at the end of the season, at the regular season, we're going to look back and be like, why didn't we lock in the second or the first seed? Why couldn't we have more home games to kind of just increase our advantage as much as possible? And we'll look back at this game, we'll look back at the Red Bulls game and be like, this is why. If we keep up our form and we kind of sit around as third, fourth, maybe drop a little bit into fifth place, like, these games are going to be the reason why we look back and say, man, like, think about what could have been, the home games we could have had, and the maximization of advantage that we could have had in the playoffs. So the good thing about, American sports and the American sports layout is that there's plenty of space to actually make the playoffs. So hopefully that's a given, right? But ideally, we finish higher than we are right now. And it's frustrating to think about how we could have been higher than we are right now, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for all of the questions and analysis to follow that we had lined up here. The only thing left at this point, Carlos, is man of the match. Who was your man of the match for the disappointing but still unbeaten game against Charleston?
Easily Leo Fernandez. I'm not even going to dance around the fact that it's totally just because of his goal. Like, that was an incredible goal. He played a great game. Again, it sounds like a broken record machine at this point. It's him and Jake LaCava have been linking up so beautifully, and they created some good chances this game too. And frankly, if it wasn't for Leo, I mean, we would have lost this game against Charleston, which that would have been a disaster, honestly.
Yeah.
it already feels like a loss, an actual loss to Charleston. Let's just call it a season, right?
Yeah, no kidding. Everything that you just said, I agree with. So my man of the match was also Leo Fernandez. I mean, it's like always lately, but what else are we supposed to say? He scored the goal. He also moved back onto the left wing back spot when we had to switch things up because of players coming off. It's not only impressive what he does on the attacking side, but also defensively. So yeah, for all of that, Leo Fernandez again, he's shooting up the scoring charts. He is second only to Jake LaCava. Jake LaCava has 6, Leo has 5. So, it's deserved at this point. And I don't know who else I would even try to give it to.
Right.
But yeah, that will do it for all of our questions here. And we will move into our standings update. But quickly before that, I do want to say, obviously, liking and subscribing to the podcast is free. We appreciate when you do that, and we ask that you keep it up. But if you need some new threads this year, you can also support this podcast a little bit more by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs we've got cooked up over there. The link is in the description. And if you do check it out, I would like for you to use the promo code COYR. Why should you use that? It will get you 10% off of your total. So, I think that that's pretty cool. We obviously have a lot of good stuff going on there. Our producer Eureka has been posting his shirts on Twitter recently, and in particular, the 3 Stanley Cups that the Tampa Bay Lightning have won so far. We're hoping for one more, and we'll have to change something up at that point. But let's not count our eggs before they hatch, because we don't want to, possibly put something out there that doesn't turn out to be, and puts yet another RBLR hex on a local team here. So yeah, just check it out, use the promo, and we will appreciate you for doing that. So I'll do the standings update, and then Carlos, I'll turn it over to you for the preview of the away game to the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. Now, we just talked about the standings very briefly here. A little bit more than that, Louisville City lead the East. Again, they have 30 points from 15 games played, and Memphis are behind them with 29 points from 14 games played. We are in third still with 27 from 16. And that unfortunately leaves us in a precarious position, because Detroit City have 26, while Pittsburgh have 24, each from 15 games played. Obviously, this means they could overtake us, and we have to see, how those games play out whenever they have to play those in a row. Birmingham Legion and Indy 11 round out the playoff spots, and the Miami is right behind them. Over in the West, Colorado Springs leads everyone in the league with 33 points from 13 games played. Incredible record, honestly. Congratulations to them. I kind of hope, because they're not us, that it doesn't keep working out for them. But what are you going to do from our position? Behind them are San Antonio on 31 points, and then all on 25 points are San Diego Loyal, New Mexico United, Sacramento Republic, and El Paso Locomotive. You should note that there is no Phoenix in the playoff spots. Very interesting things going on out west. So, Carlos, if you could, please take it away for our match this weekend against Pittsburgh.
No Phoenix rising in the playoffs just sounds so insane to me, by the way. Let me just say that real quick. But no Phoenix rising in the playoffs would be such a strange scene from these past. Anyway, whatever. Let's talk about the Eastern Conference. Let's talk about our opponent this weekend. Just the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. 5th place Pittsburgh Riverhounds. They have 1 game in hand on us, like you said, James. They're 3 points behind us. So it'll be a huge, huge game for us. Hopefully a chance to put some space between us and them, and kind of, separate the pack in the top 4 here a little bit. The Riverhounds are always a dangerous team, and historically traveling to Pittsburgh does not bode well for this Tampa Bay Rowdies club. Even in those U.S. Open Cup days when the Pittsburgh Riverhounds were considered 3rd division and we were 2nd division NASL, we could not win out there. Always a tough place to travel to, but a beautiful stadium, somewhere I've always wanted to go to personally. With that being said, though, their recent form gives us a little bit of hope. Obviously, we've beaten them at home 3-1 already, but Pittsburgh is in a bit of a slump after that game. We sort of started this slump a little bit. They lost to us 3-1, then they drew against Miami, drew against Detroit, lost 3-0, like we said, to Charleston. And then this past weekend went to Rio Grande Valley and lost 1-0 to an RGV team that, again, with all due respect to them, is not, particularly special, I guess. They're not really in the top of the Western Conference or anything, but they put up a great performance against Pittsburgh. Most of their negative results, like you said, James, come from away games. So they'll take this opportunity at home against a top team in the Tampa Bay Rowdies to try and turn their season around and get out of this slump in front of their fans. The team mostly plays in a 3-4-3 style formation, with Forbes dropping deeper than the other two up top, kind of similar to how Leo Fernandez has been playing in his new role this season with the Rowdies. There is, of course, the option for players to switch up roles, and versatility can definitely help them to achieve results. Cicerone, Dikwa, Forbes, and Dixon are all very, very familiar faces we need to watch out for. And just like us, the Riverhounds have the league's, James noted here, that this is the league's second best regular super sub in Dane Kelly, only behind Lucky M. Kasana himself, of course. Pittsburgh have also given up 18 goals so far in their 15 games played. They are known for being a defensively stout team, even if that doesn't necessarily suggest it. Now, real quickly, before we go into the predictions here, I want to just mention that game against Rio Grande Valley again. I mean, having watched a little bit of that game now, Rio Grande Valley honestly could have won by 3 or 4 goals. They had a lot of really dangerous chances. They were creating a lot of dangerous chances, and Pittsburgh seemed to be on the back foot the whole time. And personally, this wasn't a result I was expecting. I expected Pittsburgh to go in there and win by 1 or 2 goals. So again, like we've said, this weird run of form for Pittsburgh is continuing here, and hopefully it continues a little bit longer as we go up there and try to pull off a unthinkable result in Pittsburgh, and try and pull out the win. So, James, why don't you give us your prediction here, and then I'll hop in and give mine.
Absolutely. So I think that we will remain undefeated. I want to start out by saying that, but I don't expect necessarily that we will be able to pull a win out of this one. I think that that will be, let's say, too big of a rabbit to pull out of that hat. I am going to say we get possibly everyone's least favorite scoreline, but probably the most likely one here, and we draw this game 0-0.
I am going to take the too big of a rabbit prediction here and I'm going to take the Rowdies 2-1 here. And I think having this full week of preparation, again, it's a Saturday game, another full week of preparation, right? They're in bad form. We are in, I would say, good form if this game, and win. If games before this, pretty good soccer. This game didn't play that great, but I feel like we've generally bounced back after bad games in the past. So I could see us putting in a good week of work here. Scarlett being instituted back into the lineup again, and kind of bringing in that rock of stability and that veteran attitude that he brings to that back lineup, that back line. So I think we can lock him down pretty well, based on how Pittsburgh's offense has been playing recently. And I could see us churning up the offense a little bit here, obviously. Exclusively relying on Jake LaCava and Leo Fernandez might not be a winning strategy. Hopefully our starting striker here could, score a goal, right? Like their kind of role is supposed to do. And I think we'll take a 2-1 win here. Hopefully one of those goals comes from whichever striker starts on that day in our weird striker carousel here.
Yeah, I think any of those things would actually be pretty preferable to what we've seen over the past couple of weeks. But
right.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it goes up front, and obviously on the rest of the field as well. So that will do it for our preview. Let's move now into our one more thing segment, the last thing to go over this week. We'll start off with a congratulations to Rowdy's homegrown signing, and Saturday bench player, Santiago Castaneda, for winning the Gatorade Boys State Player of the Year for Florida. He did so playing for Tampa Prep and obviously with the Tampa Bay Rowdies Youth Academy on the side. So congratulations to him. There are some, this is a good group of people to walk into. The Gatorade State Player of the Year on the boys' side has led to quite a few pros. And then if you look into the individual states, obviously Florida is not a bad state for soccer. So he's definitely putting his name up in hallowed ground. The next congratulations that we want to send out are going to Kobe Henry. If you are unfamiliar with Kobe Henry, he previously played for Orange County. And I say previously because he has left to sign for Stade Reims in France's Ligue 1. That is the top division in France. How incredible is that? He is set to sign for a 5-year contract, according to reports, and a transfer record in the USL Championship, going for a reported $700,000 fee. I mean, that's pretty amazing if you ask me. Supposedly, based on appearances and how it goes for him, that fee could raise all the way up to $1 million. I mean, this really shows that there is a pathway from USL Championship, if you ask me, Carlos. And I think that this is awesome, not just for Kobe Henry, but I really think that it leads to a lot of potential benefits in the future that we need to consider too.
Yeah, a big signing like that in a league like the USL, it ripples across the league for sure. It shows that, this is a league that people are paying attention to. The big teams are paying attention to. The players are coming out of here are worth paying attention to, and they are. We've been knowing this, but it's good to see that the rest of the world is starting to notice that as well. And that's a testament to all the teams that make up this league. Really, I mean, every team has sort of done their part to make this something real, right? This isn't just, with all due respect to the NISA, the NISA, like this isn't just some random league that pops up and fades away pretty quickly into, the abyss of lower division US soccer. This is something that creates something special. I mean, obviously in the players, but just the attention on the league in general and the culture around every team is special. So it's good to see that rippling across the international headlines, right?
Yeah, I am super excited for him. But like I said, after Jose Gallegos left San Antonio to go to a club in Denmark, that was pretty cool. I think he left for a fee of $275,000, if I remember that correctly, and the reports are correct, of course. But that's awesome. I feel really good about Jose Gallegos and his future. I think that he will end up being a better player than the club that he signed for, because they unfortunately just got relegated from the Danish First Division. But when you look at the difference between the two destinations, there is a club that is in the Danish First Division and then just got relegated. And then this club that Kobe Henry has signed for is in the French First Division. And not only that, it's not like they are relegation fodder at all. This is a mid-table club that's pushing to get into some European spots. We might see them in the Europa League or the Conference League coming up soon. And if you're unfamiliar with those, it's all cool. It's all very good. Kobe Henry is gonna turn some heads, and I like that for everybody in the USL Championship. Tate Johnson and Santi Castaneda need to keep an eye on that. But sure. The last thing that we want to mention here, we talked about the Lightning earlier and a very disappointing result. Well, as Carlos and I record, we are getting set for the Lightning to, the game might have already started. I'm not entirely sure, but
in an hour from now.
In an hour from now. Thank you for correcting me. They are coming up in an hour from now. So by the time this comes out, we will have a result to talk about. But if you want to know what happened on Saturday night, what went wrong, and how we hope to fix it this night in an hour, and then again on Wednesday night when the fourth game of this series is played, please tune in to RBLR Sports. We also have our Lightning show, of course, and they are going full bore on the Lightning in the Stanley Cup Finals. There's so much to talk about, not just from this game, obviously, but like we said, what we want to see to fix everything that happened and move forward and bring this Stanley Cup back to Tampa Bay for the third time in a row. I mean, that would, I don't know if that's unprecedented, but I'm just going to go ahead and claim that it is.
It might as well be. It's been a while.
But yeah, so tune in to them, and that will do it here for the RBLR Rowdy show. We covered a lot. We covered a lot of ground, but we can't do it all because there are other teams in Tampa Bay that you need to tune into. So if you want to do that, please follow RBLR Sports. We are available on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at RBLR Sports. If you would like to get to me specifically, don't ask me for my hockey hot takes. I don't know the history or anything, but I do have some hot takes on the Rowdies and a lot of other soccer stuff. There's always soccer going on, as I'm sure everybody listening knows. You can get at me at RBLR James K. Carlos, where can people get at you?
At Carlos TPA 10 on Twitter. Around this time, every episode is when I start to take my phone out and play my favorite game of the week. What was Carlos tweeting about yesterday? It's been all Rowdies the past couple days. And one random tweet where I say, quote, LMAO, this is wild, at the Phoenix Rising result, losing to Loudoun United. And honestly, if there's a result that deserved an at LMAO, this is wild, it's probably that game. I mean, that game, that was weird. That's weird, seeing Phoenix losing against Loudoun like that.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, again, the question everybody's asking is, did the Rowdies and Phoenix Rising Football Club? Is that what happened? Did our 5-1, was it 5-1? That 5-1
it was.
It 5-1. Did we end Phoenix Rising Football Club? That's the question everybody's asking. And by everybody, I mean me, Carlos. But yes, so come follow me on Twitter at CarlosTPA10. Come see my Rowdies takes and whatnot. And yeah, not much else. Oh, one thing I will say here, ahead of the Pittsburgh game, if we get this win in Pittsburgh, right? Big if, it's going to balance out the Rowdies like mathematics here. Think about it here for a second, James, right? We never win in Pittsburgh. It just doesn't happen. We also shouldn't be losing against this Charleston Battery team. So if we win in Pittsburgh, the tie against Charleston Battery, the points balance out. That's my math for the day. I'm done with math. No more math. That's all I'm going to say. If we win, then it balances out. All right. Like I won't be as upset about this result if we win. So that's my last comment going into this weekend, hoping for that win, right? It'll balance it out.
I like that. And you know what? Without doing some quick maths to check that, I'm gonna again just go ahead and say it's absolutely true, 100%. But
it is.
If you have any, good. If you have anything to say towards either me or Carlos, you can get at us there, or you can use the hashtag #AskRBLR. And yeah, please get at us on Twitter. We love interacting with people naturally. Like and subscribe to our podcast. Of course, we are on Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, Apple, and Google Podcasts. We are on YouTube. We are on any major podcast platform that you want to use. Please check us out and please follow us there. We will catch you all next week. And in the meantime, come on, you Rowdies.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.